Hey everyone, I'm Jay.
And I'm Sean.
And as promised, today we're talking about one of my favorite movies, Labyrinth. A movie so good, I think it should not be just one of my favorites, but one of yours as well.
You heard it here.
I mean, it's just kind of a ridiculous kind of fantasy movie that it dares to be weird, dares to take the genre to unexpected places, a little slice of imagination that possibly could only come out of the world-famous Jim Henson workshop.
With a little David Bowie.
Well, a little extra magic, yes. So, I think I was mentioning this when we were talking about the wonderful soundtrack, that this movie came out in 1986, so it was a little before me. But I had an older cousin. In fact, I had really nothing but older cousins. The cousins on my dad's side are older than my mother. That sounds weird. Gross. It's not that. I mean,
it's just
it's explainable, but yeah. Yes. So I had some interesting influences, let's just say. I think that same cousin tried to get me into Xanadu, and I was like, not as taken by that one. And oddly, I'm not really into Dark Crystal either, which is the previous Jim Henson one. But Labyrinth caught my attention, my little girl attention. There was this fabulous man you just can't take your eyes off. No, even if you're a 6-year-old girl, it is a wow moment. And again, I came into the world past the time of like androgyny and all of that. So, but this man is wearing like tights with a, you know, a discernible codpiece and this great hair.
A mane.
Oh my gosh. And you know, it spoke to me. It spoke to a lot of us, but it definitely spoke to me. That's who I thought David Bowie was. You know, that's how I knew him.
It's not wrong.
No. I mean, it is. I mean, he is obviously a multi-talented man with so many facets to himself as a performer and a musician and an entertainer.
Yeah.
I did not know till much later that Sarah, the lead role in this, is played by Jennifer Connelly. And again, like my sisters, we all love this movie. It was in our house. We watched it all the time. But I didn't make the connection to this being, say, like Jennifer Connelly, a woman I feel like came out of nowhere into A Beautiful Mind, that Russell Crowe movie. Like, I feel like that's the first time I really knew a Jennifer Connelly. Apparently she was a thing in the 80s.
She's a big thing in the 80s and the 90s. Okay. But for different reasons.
Okay.
Well, not because of her acting.
Oh. Sean's throwing down the gauntlet there.
I'm just saying.
Okay. Thank you for just saying. We definitely needed to put that into the universe.
It's not a criticism in a way.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
In basic way.
So.
Okay.
She wasn't a bad actor.
Okay. Good.
She was just that beautiful girl.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, she plays 16-year-old Sarah in Labyrinth. And she's just a young girl rehearsing her lines, reading out of her favorite play that she is obsessing over. As young girls do, you know, you get into these things. And she kind of summons the Goblin King because Sarah's having a weird home life. And she's got this brand new baby brother, Toby.
And she's not happy about it.
She's not happy about it. She's been asked to babysit. It practically has ruined her life.
She's not happy about that either.
No. So she takes a cue from this play she's reading and she asks the Goblin King to take her baby brother away.
Deal accepted.
Yeah. Yeah. Big time miscalculation on her part. Whoopsie. So now she's been drawn into, like, I don't know, let's just call it a little rip into the universe. She's in this...
It's cool. She goes into this whole other magical world.
Mm-hmm. Where she has 13 hours to solve the labyrinth and save her brother.
And no one's ever done it before.
No. So, can she be the first? Well, she's going to meet a lot of people along the way, make some friends, make some enemies, make a lot of wrong choices. In fact, interestingly, I think almost all of the time she chooses the right way, meaning literally the right way, it is the wrong way.
Yeah.
So this movie does disorient you. It is meant to...
Yeah, it's a labyrinth. It's a literal maze where you
Yes.
don't know which way you're supposed to go.
But it's also an opportunity for Sarah to do a little growing up and learn some life lessons along the way. And meet a whole bunch of characters. So aside from Sarah and Jareth, who are, humanish, played by human actors in this labyrinth, the rest are all pretty much puppets out of the Jim Henson factory.
And they're awesome. There's so many good characters.
They're ridiculously cool. I mean, they said, they were working on these things for, a year and a half before production began. And yet, really, everything comes down to those last 2 weeks. Because until you get the actors and the puppeteers there actually going through the scenes, you don't know what works and what doesn't. So that's a lot of high pressure in those final days to get it right. I know, well, let's just start, because there are some characters you need to know from Labyrinth. And we did mention that we wanted to do a Labyrinth giveaway, just because we love this movie so much. And since we were talking about soundtracks, we do have a vinyl edition of the soundtrack to give away. Ooh, you gotta have it, you know you want it. So do stay tuned to the end of the video when we'll cue you into the rules of participation. So we'll just dive in and start talking about these wonderful characters, because the puppets are pretty memorable characters, actually. And that is such a tribute to the Henson workshop. Certainly he did not work alone. There are a lot of great, talented people working together to make these things come to life, and they really do.
Yeah, they do. They're full-fledged characters.
So Hoggle is probably the most important one. Gosh, he's just a guy, just a gnome of sorts wandering the maze. He works for Jareth. Sarah comes to think of him as a friend. He has not had many friends. He likes friends almost as much as he likes shiny objects. So yeah, Hoggle is a wonder. We will also meet Ludo, that sweet, sweet, moaning creature.
That's the big guy?
The big guy, yes. Who has, a soulfulness, a sadness to him. But, he's sweet. Sir Didymus.
Sir Didymus.
Sir Didymus. I mean, he's got to be a fan favorite.
He's awesome.
And his trusty steed, Ambrosius, of course.
Yeah, so that's a dog riding another dog, by the way.
Okay, but it is a puppet dog riding a real dog, more importantly.
Well, okay.
And Sir Didymus kind of reminds me of Fudgy, don't you think?
Yeah,
little snout.
whiskers.
Yeah. Oh. And then there's the Fireys.
Oh, yeah.
Who are problematic and sometimes decapitated. The door knockers.
Oh, yeah.
The junk lady. The worm. The worm who sends her in the wrong direction, right at the beginning of the film. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. This is a movie for kids. It's dark for kids.
Yeah.
I mean, there were definitely elements that scared us.
It's scary, but it's still scary for kids.
Yes, it is. I mean, they're puppets, which always, takes everything down a notch and it makes it feel a little bit okay. But I just find it interesting because the worm at the very beginning tells her which way to go. And as soon as Sarah's gone, the worm's like, oh, if she would have gone the other way, that would have led her right to the castle.
Right. The bad castle that no one should want to go to.
Exactly. And yet, the only reason Sarah, if she'd have gone right to the castle right then, she wouldn't have won. She'd have been chased away. She needed to learn the lessons and make the friends that would help her out.
It's true.
So maybe the worm was telling her the right way the whole time. So I just feel like this movie has some interesting questions like that for kids.
And it's some riddles. I remember the one where you have to choose the door, and I think that is the door knockers, right? Where one always tells the truth and one always lies. So how do you figure out which is which? And just stuff like that is a puzzle and a riddle and a maze, and it really goes well together, this whole quest.
So, I mean, this movie is kind of remarkable in a lot of ways. One way that probably doesn't really get its due is the opening title sequence. We see an owl. I don't know if you remember it, but it's a big deal in the title sequence. And it's actually the first ever attempt at a photorealistic CGI character in a movie.
Oh, that's interesting.
It is interesting because, of course, this is remembered for its puppets and for two really big stars. But that is actually a moment in history. Jareth, so that's the Goblin King, played by David Bowie. You often see him manipulating these like crystal balls. That is not CGI, but nor is it David Bowie. Actually, the choreographer, Michael Mosher, could do this. He was like a trained juggler, so he could do these tricks. He's actually standing behind David Bowie, and those are his arms.
Oh, that's funny.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
One thing that we should pay more attention to is those scenes in Sarah's bedroom, because literally the walls are covered with things that are going to turn up in the labyrinth. I mean, there's even a labyrinth in there. Everywhere you look in her bedroom, there are hints of what's to come. There is a little snow globe that has Jareth right in it.
Okay.
So if you look around that bedroom, you know, we see where all of those fantasy elements are coming from. I did mention, I think, in the last video that Dance Magic was my favorite
song.
There are lots of good ones, and you can love whichever one you love, but this one was a huge undertaking to film. So, you know, Jareth is dancing in the middle of all of his goblins, I guess. So this scene to choreograph was David Bowie, 48 Muppets, 52 puppeteers, and 8 people in goblin costumes.
Wow.
That is a heck of a set.
Yeah.
Like, this is actually, the Goblin City, that set was one of the largest sets, and it is the biggest like drop cloth, like backing that they ever had to do for a movie. So these were really intricate sets, and they had to not just look great and fantastical on film, but they had to be accessible for puppeteers, but also hiding the puppeteers. Yeah. So there's a lot to think about when you are building these sets.
Well, that's where the Henson workshop really shines, because I never noticed any of that stuff as a kid. It just seems like a thing that could exist.
That's
so
right.
To make that design is really amazing.
Brian Froud is the conceptual artist behind all of the craziness of the Labyrinth and the Dark Crystal as well. His son Toby plays Baby Toby in the movie. Okay. That's why he is named Toby, because Baby Toby didn't respond to the character name, so they had to rename him Toby. And this kid was just apparently in a good mood the whole time. Just loving life. He actually sits on Jareth's lap during a lot of that song, and he looks like he's in a bit of a trance. But really, somebody is just like out of shot of the camera, has a little puppet on hand to keep him entertained. Which is funny, because I said 48 Muppets are in that scene. Yeah. And at one point, the camera kind of looks away at Baby Toby, who is crying because he's being pushed and pulled by the goblins. But the thing is, they couldn't get this kid to cry. He was not afraid of the Muppets at all. He loves them, in fact. He's got to spend some quality time on set with them. He thinks they're his personal toys. So they had to wait till this kid just wore himself out and it was beyond his nap time, and then he got teary for the scene. But they couldn't, like, he just wasn't afraid of these Muppets at all. We might have been afraid at home, but this kid just thought they were his good buddies.
Well, isn't that nice?
Yes. So David Bowie, like, again, this was probably my first experience of David Bowie as a kid. I don't know if anybody thought this was a weird move for him at the time, but a lot of rock stars were considered for the role, including Michael Jackson, Prince, Mick Jagger, and in fact, Jim Henson really wanted Sting.
Thank God they got David Bowie.
Well, it was his kids, Jim Henson's kids, who were like, no, you gotta get David Bowie.
Good for them.
Yeah, thank goodness. And it was so right. I mean, it would kind of be interesting with any of those people mentioned.
It would be interesting to see those.
But David Bowie is perfect. This is such a great role for him, and it seems like it's written for him.
Yeah, it does.
So it took, for both him and Jennifer Connelly, a little while to get used to acting to puppets. Especially David Bowie felt, because when the puppet responds to you, it's not usually the puppeteer with his hand up the ass, it's by a guy off stage. So it's the voice, you're looking at the puppet and he's talking to you, but the voice comes from behind you. So it takes a little while to get into this universe and really start to feel relaxed enough to look natural with them. But it also takes an awful lot of hard work for the puppeteers. The little goblins and stuff, there were 48 of those and 52 puppeteers, so that's not too bad. But some of the bigger characters needed a lot of people working at the same time. For example, there were 2 people inside the Ludo costume. When they first got to set with this thing, it weighed 100 pounds. And Jim Henson said, no, we cannot have a thing that weighs 100 pounds. They sent it back to the workshop. It came back weighing 75. They stripped out everything they could. It was still too much for one person to be manipulating. So there are 2 people in there. Ludo's right horn has a camera in it. And then the TV monitor is inside his belly, so the people inside can watch where they're going and not run into stuff, which is, a fun thing to have to worry about. The hoggle, the little gnome, there's a person inside that suit by the name of Sherry Weiser. She's a little person who put a lot of a hop, skip, and a jump into a hoggle. Yeah. He's got a very distinctive step to him. But there are actually 4 puppeteers on the outside making hoggle work. So Jim Henson's son, Brian Henson, would wear like a glove, basically, to manipulate his jaw. And Brian Henson was also supplying the voice. A second puppeteer is wearing another glove where all the fingers give lip movements. A third person had fingertip joysticks, and those moved his eyes and lids. And a fourth had the joystick thing for eyebrows and a foot pedal for his skin. So that's 5 people making one character work. So this took weeks and weeks for them to practice and get straight for every line delivered. That's a crazy amount of teamwork on that, isn't it?
It really is.
So you may remember that Hoggle makes a lot of weird grunty noises as he skips along. And that's because the only way Sherry Weiser had of seeing out was when his mouth was open. Oh. So they made him a bit of a groaner so that his mouth could be open more of the time and she would not run into walls and such. So George Lucas was actually a good friend of Jim Henson's, and he's a producer on this movie. And he kind of wanted to stay away a little bit because he didn't want to steal any thunder. Obviously, he was coasting off of the great success of Star Wars. But he did come in for the editing, so they were editing together. And Jim Henson always said, like, George was very action-oriented, and so he would cut around dialogue pretty severely, and Jim Henson was kind of the opposite, so they balanced each other and fought over it a lot, but they brought balance, they felt, to that movie. This is actually adapted. I think it's a pretty loose adaptation, I guess I'll say, to a Maurice Sendak book. It's called Outside Over There. So like I was saying, in Sarah's bedroom, there are a lot of hints, and there are other books of his where the wild things are. Yes. So you can see little hints all over the place. Now, if David Bowie had a lot of other rock stars vying for his role, Jennifer Connelly was chosen amidst a whole bevy of popular 80s actresses. Sarah Jessica Parker went out for it, Mary Stuart Masterson, all the three named ladies. Ali Sheedy, Marissa Tomei, Jane Krakowski. So lots of ladies went out for it, and it was Jennifer Connelly who landed the role. And what a role. What a thing to break out in, to have. I mean, she feels like even today, and David Bowie said the same. David Bowie said, like, every Christmas, a new crop of kids know who he is. Like, they've gotten this movie for Christmas, and he gets recognized by children for being Jareth, who was such an iconic role. Actually, another one of my elderly cousins named her son Jareth for that movie. Not Jared, Jareth. TH at the end. That's a signature move. So, one of the most memorable scenes to me as a kid, because it was so creepy, was when Sarah is falling down the shaft, and it's just hands. It's just a bunch of hands, and they're all kind of like reaching out at her and grabbing her. And I mean, she visibly hates it. I hated it. It just makes you feel creepy, right? So this was like a 40-foot high rig they had to make on the set. She was harnessed in, and there were 100 people with their hands shoved through, grabbing at her. So just think of how this rig had to be built to accommodate 100 bodies.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
So I just think like that is such a ridiculous thing when you're there in real life and you see just a big tower of 100 people laying on top of each other, and then you just have to act like it's the craziest thing ever in a different way than the craziest thing that it is. The forest scene was totally made for the production. They trucked in 120 truckloads of tree branches, 1,200 turfs of grass, 850 pounds of dried leaves. And I do wonder, like, did they just ask nearby people to bag them? And, like, where do you get 150 pounds of dry leaves? 133 bags of lichen and 35 bundles of old man's beard. So, yeah, they made a whole forest. So you better, like, pause and really appreciate the heck out of that when they're walking through. This movie got a royal premiere in London. So Prince Charles and Princess Diana were in attendance. Princess Diana got to meet Ludo, who was at the premiere.
Wow.
And said, "Isn't he wonderful?" And that's true. Prince Charles laughed and was perhaps the only laugher at the Bog of Stench. Remember that scene with the great farting, disgusting smell that is blamed on Ludo? But it is not his fault. It is the Bog of Stench. Well, apparently Prince Charles loves a good fart joke.
Who doesn't?
You know who didn't like this movie was a lot of critics.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it had mixed positive reviews, but there were some kind of nasty ones, and both Siskel and Ebert were on the no side of this one.
Oh, that's too bad.
I know. Ebert gave it 2 out of 4 stars and said it never really came alive for him.
Oh, that's a very difficult criticism to hold up.
Yes. Siskel was even meaner. He said it was awful, it was pathetic, it was ugly, and it was sleazy. He thought putting a baby in peril was a sleazy thing to do. Oh,
Siskel, you've done worse.
So this movie was not a huge success when it came out. It did all right. But it has been hugely successful ever since.
Of course it has. It's
so
a
it got to come
movie.
out on VHS and Laserdisc, and just new people just keep discovering it. It is completely adored by critics today. It is on everybody's to be watched list. Best movies of the 80s, certainly.
Absolutely.
It has a crazy iconic status. So it is one of those cult movies that just was so adored by fans that it has been passed on and passed on.
Yeah, but it's a cult movie because it's a great movie.
Right.
So
no,
it
was definitely is.
Ignored or passed by at the start, and it's grown into what it always should have been.
Well, I think now people kind of understand that perhaps both that and The Dark Crystal were ahead of their time.
Yeah, being more mature and dark for kids.
Yes. But it was like heavy fantasy elements, and so it has continued to find its audience and be very much appreciated because it is a really great movie.
Yes, it is.
So great that they want to make a sequel.
Oh.
/ they are making a sequel. In fact, it was just confirmed this past May. Scott Derrickson, who directed the Doctor Strange movie, is going to be directing it.
Interesting.
And Jim Henson's children, both Brian Henson, who worked on the first one, and Lisa Henson, are producing.
Okay.
So she's happening.
All right.
What's going to be in it? We don't know.
Yeah.
But at different times, they've tried to get this off the ground, and it's difficult because it is so beloved. But it really is lightning in a bottle. You know, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. So it is hard to really believe that we can reproduce that magic again. Especially not with David Bowie or Jim Henson, who were both visionaries in their own fields.
Yes, they were.
So that's a tall order, and I know a lot of us will be hoping that some miracle can be done. So, I think, hasn't everyone seen this movie? It's so great. It needs to be seen. The music needs to be appreciated. There's just so much to love about it.
Well, yeah, everything.
Mm-hmm. And everybody has, I think, a favorite character. Do you have a favorite character?
I think it has to be Sir Didymus.
I know, isn't he so great?
He's the best.
Yes.
But Hoggle's great.
He is. Ludo is.
Yes, Ludo's awesome.
Yeah. And of course, even though Jareth is the villain, he's also
he's such
the coolest guy in the world.
Oh, he is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And you know what I really loved as a little girl? Of course, there's a ball scene.
Oh yeah, there is.
And of course, she's got a Cinderella dress on. But for me, it wasn't even the dress, it was her hair. She's got great big 80s hair, but she's got like crystals woven through it. My goodness. I could get into some major cosplay around that. Let me tell you, I've got an inner Sarah in here.
Yes.
That is just aching to get out.
To the Goblin Ball.
If only I could find my Jareth. So, to celebrate this wonderful movie, we want to give somebody a copy of the vinyl soundtrack, and we've got some other goodies, Labyrinth goodies too, note card stickers, pins, and even a COVID face mask.
Yeah, perfect.
That's right. Let your fandom be out there. So yes, not a lot of rules because this is open internationally. Anyone can enter as long as you are subscribed to us and your subscriptions are open. And you leave a comment down below. Let us know who your favorite Labyrinth character is. And we will consider you entered into the contest, which is of course not, condoned or sponsored by YouTube in any way. This is just an our channel kind of thing to celebrate a movie that I think deserves to be celebrated.
I agree.
Every day, all day.
Let's do it.
Okay, so good luck. I think we'll probably leave this open for a week. and then we will randomly pick a winner. So let us know your favorite character, and thank you guys for watching. We love the Labyrinth, and we appreciate all of you loving it along with us.
Good luck.
Bye.